For the first time in the 2,000-year history of the Catholic Church, an American sits on the throne of St. Peter. With the title Leo XIV, he is praised as a symbol of renewal, dialogue, and global reconciliation. But beyond the veil of solemn ceremony, a silent storm is brewing within the heart of American Protestantism. Could this be the beginning of a long-awaited unity between the Vatican and the Evangelical world? Or is it the opening move in a global strategy to Catholicize America from within? Some call it God's answer to the dream of unity. Others warn it's the most sophisticated deception of the end times. So what do you believe? Or better yet, are you ready to ask the most important questions about faith and power, like never before? In today's video, we'll trace this unfolding controversy, from the White House to the Vatican, to uncover what is true faith and what is politics disguised as religion, the rise of a new pope and a new era. For the first time in the 2,000-year history of the Catholic Church, an American now sits on the throne of St. Peter. With the name Pope Leo XIV, this newly elected pontiff has already become a symbol of reform, global dialogue, and a more inclusive Vatican in the eyes of many. But behind the solemn ceremony and hopeful headlines, a storm is quietly brewing, particularly among American Protestant communities. The moment white smoke rose from the Sistine Chapel chimney, Catholics around the world waited with bated breath. Habemus Papam, we have a pope, the cardinal declared. But when the name Leo XIV was spoken and his American origin confirmed, reactions were split. Within Catholic circles, especially in North America and Europe, many hailed this moment as long overdue. The West, particularly the United States, has long been a center of Catholic growth, influence, and theology. To them, Pope Leo XIV represents not only a bridge between continents, but a new era where the Church finally speaks more directly to the modern Western world. But in Protestant America, especially within more conservative Evangelical and Baptist denominations, the news hit differently. Prominent pastors and faith leaders quickly took to their pulpits and platforms, not to celebrate, but to warn. To them, this wasn't just a religious milestone. It was a potential Trojan horse. Some claimed it was the beginning of a soft campaign to re-Catholicize America. Others saw it as a symbol of political religious entanglement, an effort to bring Rome's hierarchy closer to Washington's heart. And more alarmingly, a few even called it a sign of the end times, a false unity masked as peace. Historically, the Protestant-Catholic divide in the United States has been deep and often hostile. Rooted in theological differences like sola scriptura, scripture alone, and justification by faith, many Protestants have viewed the Vatican not as a partner in faith, but as the very institution their Reformation ancestors once protested. So what does this moment truly signify? A hopeful step toward unity, or a calculated maneuver cloaked in faith? Is Pope Leo XIV a man of peace sent by God to answer the centuries-old prayer of Christian reconciliation? Or is he part of a larger spiritual agenda, one designed to subtly influence America's religious and political fabric? One thing is clear: this is not just a Catholic event. This is a turning point that touches on national identity, religious autonomy, and the ever-blurring line between faith and power. And as the world watches, the real question may not be who is the Pope, but rather, what kind of future is being shaped behind the scenes? What is Christian nationalism, and who owns it? At first glance, the phrase Christian nationalism might sound like a call to unite faith and country under divine blessing. But scratch beneath the surface, and you'll find a fierce debate about the very soul of Christianity in the United States. So what exactly is Christian nationalism? Is it a movement to protect Christian values in public life? Or is it the attempt to mold religion into the image of national identity? baptizing patriotism in the name of Jesus. The roots of this movement go back centuries. In the 17th century, Puritan missionaries arrived on American shores, believing they were founding a New Jerusalem. Their theology was not just about personal salvation, it was also about divine destiny for a nation. Over time, this belief evolved into a uniquely American fusion of religion and political purpose. Fast forward to the 21st century, and Christian nationalism has found new champions. From conservative pulpits to political rallies, phrases like "God bless America" are now often spoken in the same breath as "Jesus saves." But are these two declarations truly in harmony? Or do they represent a growing confusion, even a conflict, between the message of the gospel and the mission of the nation? Under the banner of MAGA, Make America Great Again, we've seen an unprecedented merging of evangelical fervor with political ambition. Donald Trump, though not a traditionally devout Christian, became a messianic figure to many within this movement, hailed as a defender of Christian America against secular threats. But critics warn that this version of faith risks turning Jesus into a political mascot and the cross into a cultural badge rather than a spiritual symbol. It's no longer about Christ's kingdom, not of this world, but rather about reclaiming this world as a Christian domain. And here's the tension. Can the church remain faithful to the gospel while being entangled in the politics of power? Is Christian nationalism a holy mission or a subtle heresy? For many Protestants, this debate is personal and painful. It raises unsettling questions. Does aligning with nationalism strengthen the witness of the church or compromise it? When Jesus and the flag stand side by side, who really holds our allegiance? In this climate, the election of a pope from the United States, a global symbol of religious authority, is more than symbolic. It's a spark thrown into the powder keg of American religious identity. To some, it feels like divine validation. To others, it's the Vatican crossing into their territory. So, who owns Christianity in America? Is it the Vatican, the Evangelical megachurch, the Constitution? Or perhaps no one at all, because the gospel was never meant to serve a single nation. The Protestant suspicion. Fear of Rome. Reborn. When the white smoke rose from the Sistine Chapel and the world learned that the new Pope, Leo XIV, was an American, the Catholic faithful rejoiced. But in many conservative Protestant circles, the news sparked something very different. Unease, and in some cases, outright alarm. For many evangelicals, especially in the Bible Belt, this wasn't just a religious milestone, it was a prophetic signal. A line whispered in hushed tones re-emerged. Rome never changes. This phrase, often attributed to 19th and 20th century Protestant preachers, encapsulates a deep-rooted suspicion that behind the grandeur of the Vatican lies an unyielding desire for religious dominance. And now, with a pope born on American soil, raised not in the hills of Italy, but in the heartland of the United States, some fear that Rome is no longer reaching out to the world, it is reaching in. Across conservative media, podcasts, and pulpits, an old narrative is being revived, that a global religious order, once halted by the Reformation, is slowly reawakening. The idea that Catholicism, once seen as an external power, has now found a foothold within America, even in its highest spiritual and political discourse, sends chills down the spine of some evangelical leaders. Figures like John MacArthur and commentators on fringe but influential platforms echo warnings that once sounded far-fetched. They're now asking, could the beast of Revelation be re-emerging, not from Europe this time, but from our own backyard? This sentiment isn't new. Ellen G. White, one of the founders of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, warned in the 19th century that Rome would one day regain its power, and that the United States would play a critical role in enforcing religious laws that mirror Catholic doctrine. Her book, The Great Controversy, has seen a surprising resurgence in downloads and mentions since the papal announcement. To these groups, Leo XIV is not merely a spiritual figure. He's a symbol of a deeper convergence between church and state, between tradition and authority. And with America's deep-seated fear of centralized power, especially when it wears religious robes, the reaction was inevitable. But what's even more telling is the language being used. Phrases like, "An American Pope is the ultimate Trojan horse. The Vatican has infiltrated American Christianity. This is the final deception before Christ returns." While mainstream Protestant denominations may not embrace this level of alarmism, the concern is spreading, particularly among those who view prophecy not as metaphor, but as unfolding reality. Is this fear irrational? Or does it reflect centuries-old theological tension that has never truly healed? Could this be an opportunity for greater understanding, or the spark that reopens old wounds? As whispers turn into sermons and blog posts into movements, one thing becomes clear. The rise of Pope Leo XIV has not only stirred Rome, it has awakened Wittenberg. Faith, politics, and power. Where do we draw the line? When religion crosses into the realm of politics, the result can be either divine guidance or dangerous manipulation. In the United States, where the line between church and state is both constitutionally protected and constantly tested, the rise of Christian nationalism has reignited debates that date back centuries. Now, with a pope hailing from the very soil of the American heartland, questions surrounding faith, influence, and political ambition grow louder than ever. Over the last few decades, laws influenced by religious values, ranging from abortion bans to school prayer debates, have placed Christianity, especially Protestant evangelicalism, at the center of national policy making. But behind the political curtain lies a deeper struggle. Who truly wields spiritual authority? And what happens when the Vatican, a global religious power, begins to cast its shadow across American political and moral decisions? Historically, Protestants have been wary of Catholic political influence. Memories of the Reformation and the battles for religious independence are not easily erased. The fear that a pope, especially one with American roots, could sway national decisions is not just symbolic. Critics argue that this could represent the ultimate convergence of church and state fuel, a dream for some and a nightmare for others. From Capitol Hill to international summits, whispers have already begun. Is the Vatican subtly influencing global climate policy, migration stances, or international peace talks under the banner of moral leadership? And more importantly, are American leaders, some deeply evangelical, willing participants in this spiritual political partnership, or are they pawns in a larger theological chess game? Catholics, on the other hand, often view the Pope's influence as spiritual guidance, not political interference. For many, the Pope is a voice of conscience in a morally confused world. Yet even within the Catholic fold, there is tension. Some traditionalists fear that aligning too closely with American political interests could dilute the Church's prophetic voice. Among Protestants, especially in the South and Midwest, the reaction is more severe. The idea of shared influence with Rome, once considered the enemy of true biblical Christianity, feels like a betrayal to their spiritual heritage. We preach Christ, not Caesar, some declare. To them, spiritual power belongs in the hands of local churches, not in global institutions. Still, there are those who see opportunity in this moment. Could interfaith cooperation finally bring healing to centuries of division? Could a Catholic Pope and Protestant leaders unite? Not under one dogma, but one mission: to restore moral clarity in an age of confusion? This is the tightrope we walk, between hope and heresy, between unity and uniformity. Drawing the line between faith and politics is not just a matter of doctrine, it's a question of destiny. Hope or heresy, what the future could hold. As the world watches a Catholic Pope from the United States rise to global prominence, a deeper question is beginning to stir beneath the surface of theology and politics alike. Are we witnessing the dawn of a new moral order, one that could bind the Vatican, the White House, and the United Nations into a unified global conscience? It's a scenario that feels both inspiring and unsettling. On one hand, the idea of a world finally united in ethical vision, a shared sense of justice, human dignity, and spiritual responsibility, is a dream that has echoed through prayers for generations. The hope of peace, of reconciliation between warring factions, of healing after centuries of division. It is undeniably beautiful. But on the other hand, the very notion of a centralized moral authority, subtly enforced through soft power, media narratives, and global policy alignment, sends chills down the spines of many, especially those who remember what happens when institutions of faith and politics merge too seamlessly. In Protestant circles, especially among more conservative or apocalyptic-minded communities, whispers have grown louder. Is this the beginning of a one-world religion? It is not a new fear, but it has been given new fuel. Images from prophecy, old sermons warning of Rome's eventual return to power, and age-old suspicion of the Vatican's ambitions have begun to resurface. For them, a pope who speaks the language of democracy while holding the ancient authority of Catholic tradition is not just a bridge. He might be a trap, yet not everyone is afraid. Among younger generations, Catholic, Protestant, and even non-religious, there is a cautious kind of optimism. They're tired of endless division, tired of culture wars dressed in liturgy, tired of theological tribalism that wounds more than it heals. For them, a spiritual leader who speaks of reconciliation, compassion, and dialogue is not the Antichrist. They see hope, not heresy. They see the possibility of a future where faith is no longer defined by rivalry, but by shared witness. So what are we really seeing unfold? Is this the Vatican quietly tightening its grip through symbolic influence? Or are we being invited, perhaps by Providence itself, to reimagine what Christian unity could mean in a broken world? If true faith is rooted in humility, in the pursuit of truth rather than the conquest of power, then perhaps the right question is not who is in control, but rather what spirit is guiding this change. We find ourselves at a moral and spiritual crossroads. One path leads to renewed tribalism, suspicion, and fear, the kind that walls off hearts and closes the mind to anything unfamiliar. The other path demands something harder: courage, a willingness to walk into the unknown, to rethink old assumptions, to ask questions without fear, to listen. Could this be a divine invitation to reimagine unity, not as conformity or institutional merger, but as communion across difference? Could the Church, long fractured, be entering a season not of collapse, but of transformation? Maybe, maybe not. But one thing is certain: silence will not protect us. Only truth will. And truth, by nature, is not afraid to be questioned. Perhaps the greatest danger is not that we are being deceived, but that we stop asking what love, justice, and holiness require of us in this hour. Because maybe, just maybe, God is not done writing the story of His Church. Perhaps the most dangerous moment in history isn't when two faiths disagree, but when we stop asking why. Because if a pope from Chicago can redefine how we understand faith and power, then maybe the real question isn't who holds the throne, but rather, will you stay silent or will you speak? If this story made you pause, if it felt strange, unsettling, or left you wanting more, don't let it end here. Share it. Not because you have the answers, but because someone else may need the courage to start asking the same questions. What future awaits faith when religion and politics begin to move as one? What becomes of belief when tradition is dressed in new garments of influence? Let us know what you think. Your voice matters. Thank you for joining us on this journey with A&O Productions. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Leave your thoughts in the comments and share this video with those you think will find value in it. Because sometimes the world doesn't need one more opinion. It needs one more honest question.